Good evening, everybody, and welcome to you know Maharal Ner Mitzvah Part 7. The description, rather the pages that we'll learn tonight are mainly the one that's on the screen, but we start for just two lines on the page before. All right, we had just learned that. Actually, I have to have a string to you know. If you're listening to this as if you didn't hear this live, you don't answer Amen to a bracha. Just you should know. You only answer a recording is not a living person making a bracha if you're catching it. You didn't hear this live stream. I should have pointed out before I made the bracha. Not if you were not catching this live stream, you do not answer Amen. Okay. So now, last thing we learned was that the one of the peculiar xeris, evil edicts that the Greeks decreed upon us to separate us from Torah was to engrave on an ox, on a horn of an ox, engrave on a horn of an ox, Elechem Chelek B'Kei Yisrael. Right, we have no part, no connection to the God of Israel. All right. Engrave on an horn of an ox and lanu chelek. Okay, so we do not have a part in, God forbid, I have no connection to God. Right? So what was the meaning behind that peculiar thing that they decreed upon us? So Mara wants to decode it based on a Gemara. Omdin brachas lam beis on beis. To unpack what the Greeks were trying to say with this edict is can be understood based on the Gemara and Brachas Lamed Beis on Beis. Vatomer Tzir Pasuk says it's Am Yisrael talking to Hashem, so to speak. Azavani Hashem, Hashem Shechani, Hashem has forgotten me and Hashem has abandoned me. So now we move to the next page, which is the link displayed on the screen. Hi, so the Gemara says, well, what does the pasuk mean? There's a pasuk in Yishai. Hashem, Klal says, HaKadosh forgot me. Hashem abandoned me. Hainu shchucha, hainu atzuva, hainu shchucha. What's the difference between being abandoned and being forgotten? It's the same thing, seemingly. Amar Reish Lakish, so Reish Lakish says, Amar Knesset Yisrael, Livnei HaKadosh Baruch Hu. The Jewish people say before Hashem, Ribono Shel Olam, Adam Nosi Shalish Rishona Zocha Mas Rishona. If a husband, married another woman, after leaving his first wife, does he even remember the first Ataz of time Shechachtani? You abandoned me, meaning that by Hashem threw us into Gauls, he seemingly divorced us and forgot us. All right, so we're complaining about, being both abandoned and forgotten. There's, 12, constellations, the 12 zodiacs I created in the heavens. So there's going to be an astronomical number of stars over here. Each one of those 12 has 30 armies. And each one of those armies has 30 legions. And out of those, each one of those legions has 30 like patrols. And on each one of those patrols, there's 30 platoons. And on each one, there's like, each one of those platoons have another 30 gangs. And each one of those gangs is each one of those gangs has 365 300 and actually it should be the way I'm reading 3,650 million stars. The number 3 survives parallel to the days of the solar year. So you do the math. It's an astronomical amount of numbers. Even just the regular number is just one of, for each gang, and there are 30 gangs, and then there's look, the math is literally astronomical. So I tell you about all the stars. You calculate, and then you tell me how many stars there are. Okay, you guys do the math. Anyway, we just read it, like 30 times 30 times 30 times 30 times, ultimately times 30 million, whatever, huge numbers. Okay, but let's put the numbers aside. All these stars, which they're in the millions of millions, right? I only created for you, right? Meaning, referring to the famous Chazal, the few vibrations of Shul Yisrael in the beginning, for the sake of Klal, it's called the first. How can you say I forgot you? I created, and look at all the millions and millions, maybe billions of stars I created, and I all created for you. You're saying I abandoned you and I forgot you. I created everything for you. Could a woman forget her child? And that's how the pasuk continues, right? So the Gemara darshes it to say, "Amar klumi eshkach olos elim v'pitrei chaim shekraf lefanai b'midbar." Ola also as a carbon. Ola, do you think I'm going to forget all the olos elim? All the olos of rams, and all the pitrei rachamim, and all the bechor of behema kshera that you makriv before me in the 40 years of desert. Not possible for me to abandon you or forget you. Right? So Am Yisrael, as it were, respond to Hashem. Ribbon Shalom. You say you don't forget anything, right? So maybe you won't forget the sin of the golden calf either. But the pasuk goes on, these will be forgotten, right? So Eila, because they said Eila Elohecha Yisrael when they worshipped the ego, these are your gods, Israel. Eila tishkachachna, about the sin of the golden calf, I will forget. Oh, wait, so there are things you do forget, right? So maybe you'll forget also how we said Na'aseh v'nishma and committed ourselves to you at Sinai, and you made a covenant with us at Sinai. Amar Allah, so the pasuk he says back to Am Yisrael, which alluded to in this pasuk Yisrael, va'anochi lo ishkachech. And Anochi, I will not forget, when I said Anochi Hashem Elokecha, when I appeared at Sinai, that I'll never forget. So let's go through steps. I can't forget you because I created all of reality for you. I forget you. So okay, so if you don't forget anything, you won't forget the Chet Ego. No, Chet Ego I will forget about. Oh, so if you can forget about the Chet Ego, you can forget about the covenant at Sinai. No, Anochi Hashem Elokecha, I said at Sinai when I made the covenant with you, that I'll never forget. Okay. No, so now Vain Rabbi Lazar, Amar Rabbi Shai is what Rabbi Lazar says there. Rabbi Shai Meinach saved. What is that? Gam Eila Tishkachachnu Zemasayo. These will be forgotten. These is Elo Hecha Yisrael that they said when they did the ego, that will be forgotten. But Anochi will not be forgotten. That was, the covenant made at Sinai. The Anochi, when Hashem revealed himself, Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Adkan. This is the lashon of the Gemara over there on Lamed Beis on Beis. Umashor klum eshkach olos elim pitrachan shigal frad banbar lomer shigal of. So now the Maharal deals with perhaps the most obvious question. Hashem says, I'm not going to forget all those olos of rams and all those bechor, behema, tahora that you were makriv, that you sacrificed in the 40 years in the desert. Why didn't Hashem just simply say, I won't forget all the sacrifices you sacrificed? They're focusing on those that were in the desert, the karbonis of the midbar. Whoa, what's special about that? Just say, I won't forget your karbonis. I was like, no. dafka, those karbonas that were offered during the 40 years in the desert. Right? V'zeh balomar kieli so shumasar Hashem's brach b'vei shem divram Hashem's brach betzah rishon v'davos ein lo silk v'asar klau ad yishach ben shecha ובei shamid היה הקרב הראשון, הקרב הראשון הוא עיקר ועצם הדוב, בני שהוא עצחו, חתכו הוא עיקר והוא בעצם ולא במקרה, דו שהוא עיקר ועצם אין שכחה. כי דבר שאינו עיקר והוא מקרבן, יש בו שכחה, לפי שהוא מקרב, ודבר שהוא עצם הדבר, אין שכחה בו. Right? So now, well, let's go back to the beginning of Gemara. I'm going to paraphrase what I read through in my own words. But Maharal clearly means this. It all starts off, everything I created for you. I mean, the Gemara starts off, everything I created for you. So something that, is true from the get-go, that is its essence. That was the prime directive, so that's called its essence. He's not referencing this Gemara, but there's no question that he has this Gemara in mind. And Reb Tzadok likes referring to this Gemara all the time. That if a person sees the letter Tes in his dream, it's a Gemara Baba Kaba Daf Nun Hey. You see the letter Tes in a dream, it's a good sign because the first time you see the letter Tes in the Torah is in the word Tov. Right? The essence of something comes out by how it's first created, first introduced, because that's the prime objective of what caused it to be. So that's what it is. That's what it is. What it is what it is. Right? So, and what it is revealed by its initial creation. Right? The way it is in its initial creation, because that's what caused it to be created. Right? Its initial creation, its initial revelation, that demonstrates the essence, right? So everything was created for Klal Yisrael. So the beginning of the world is for Klal Yisrael, right? So that shows Am Yisrael is something which Hashem will never forget, because all of created reality is for Am Yisrael, right? So now that also has to be exhibited, not just at the beginning of the creation world, but also there should be a telltale sign of it in the beginning of Am Yisrael's worship of God. Right? The first act, the first instant of being, the first revelation sets the tone, of what the whole thing is about. Right? That is the greatest revelation of the essence. The first is the essence, because that's the prime reason, right? It emerged. So that must be its essence. Right? So the first time Am Yisrael served Hashem was in the Midbar, and so I'm not forgetting those korbanos. Right? The fact that Am Yisrael, when they were first born as a nation, immediately started serving Hashem, that shows Am Yisrael is in essence connected to Hashem. If the Am Yisrael had been created, it just arose as a nation, and then later on decided to serve Hashem, it would not show that our connection to Hashem is our essence. The fact that as soon as Am Yisrael emerged as a nation, which is when they left Mitzrayim and entered the Midbar, that was the emergence, our first emergence as a nation. We served Hashem, right? That shows that's our essence, right? Because what could be forgotten is something that's, by the wayside, something that's like by happenstance, something that's not the essence. No, that's not the essence. It's not that important. Right? It's not the essence, so it really is forgettable. Something that's not the essence, could be here today and gone tomorrow. So it's the essence that's eternal regarding this thing, because that's its essence. That's what it is. Right? So the details that are not part of the essence could be forgotten, because, and that's very apropos, because the details that are not the essence could easily cease to exist. It's not the thing itself. Right? The essence is not forgotten. The details that are by happenstance, that just happen to be those things, could be forgotten. L'kach Omar, klum eshkach etzem hadavar. I'm not going to forget the essence, your essence. Mashikil fanei b'midbar, right? That you sacrificed me when you first emerged as a nation in the desert. That shows that Hashem, Am Yisrael, be'etzem, in essence, are servants of Hashem. Because that's what we did from inception. What you do from inception, the first act, the first revelation, the first moment of being, that is the essence. So as soon as they became Hashem, immediately served Hashem, it shows that they are in essence servants of Hashem. Right? How could that be forgotten? Right? So Am Yisrael is the essence of creation, and you see from, we also see from Am Yisrael's first coming into being that the first thing they did was serve God. So that shows that's their essence. Right? So I should say it's impossible. The essence of something, cannot be forgotten. Right. And now, of course, you have all types of questions about how you forgot a lot of important things. Even before a critical test, you forgot a lot of important things. So the Maharal, knows what you guys are thinking right now. I forget important, essential things all the time. Right? For the forgetfulness that's being mentioned over here. Right. The forgetfulness is not like our forgetfulness that we had of human beings, right? Right, which comes from a frailty of the brain, which God doesn't have such frailties. Can't say God has any type of frailty that will cause him to forget. God forbid. Right? Right. So now, forgetfulness over here that's being said is to not pay attention, to swerve your attention away, right? I mean, we're not talking about weakness of the brain. They just can't recall, which obviously doesn't apply to God. Forgetfulness over here is like you say to a person who's like, he's like obsessing over something. Hey, forget about it. Forget about it, right? Don't we say that? You know what I mean? Like, don't dwell on it. Turn your attention away from it. Doesn't mean literally forget that you'll never recall it, right? Forget about it. Forget about it is don't pay attention, right? It shouldn't be on your mind anymore. Sadly, also, sometimes everyone knows you shouldn't do this bad thing or that bad thing, or drive through past a stop sign, even though the street's totally empty, right? But we forget about it. That's turn your attention away, right? So, of course, what Am Yisrael was accusing Hashem abandoned us and forgot us. It's not that, he can't recall that there's a Jewish people. God forbid, it doesn't apply to God. He doesn't have frailties of any type. It means that he has turned his attention away from us. He doesn't care about us anymore. He cares about other nations, God forbid. And that's why Shekucha and Azuva are mentioned together. Same breath. Shekha is a type of abandonment in the mind. I'm not going to think about you. Whatever. I'll take a risk. Just like, the Bidens know that they have a granddaughter, Navy, right? But they are forgetting about her. She doesn't have a stocking by the fireplace. Sorry, that's been in the news the last few days, right? I talk about that type of forgetting. I mean, Joe, yeah, he can't recall, but the other Bidens like Hunter, they know. Yeah, they're just not paying attention or acknowledging. It's that type of forgetfulness of non-acknowledgement, not inability to recall. All right. All right. But Hashem replies, can a woman forget her child? I can never forget you. Right? Button shall em benaem l'rov hatzir v'chibar shesh lehem el bina kach zeh pili yisor me'Hashem yisbarach l'rov chibar v'atzir shesh so im Hashem yisbarach God shein bane k'mo banim nechshavim. Right? So can a woman forget, right, her child? It's impossible. Meaning, of course, a woman will never cease to recall that she had a baby, but we're talking about a woman can never stop loving her child. That type of, right, can never stop loving her child. Yeah, Isha, not Hunter. Yeah, he could forget about his daughter, but we're not talking about it, right? Sorry, I just couldn't resist. All right, but because the Maharal says, the woman carried her child for 9 months. Of course, she could never forget, as in never cease caring about her child. Right. So also Hashem says, Am Yisrael, you're to me like children. A woman can't forget her children. Hashem לכך פרישון מיד שיוצאו, אף אם היו במדבר, היו מקור ברס, וזהו מצד עצם ישראל. Right. So now, Am Yisrael, how they're like children to Hashem is demonstrated. Well, first of all, Maharal backtracks and says, even before we get into this philosophy, that's the first thing we did as a nation. Even without getting philosophical, says the Maharal, that the korbanos you brought in the midbar, desert, desert, you're fighting for your survival. You should be concerned about Israel. Where are you going to find livestock in the desert to sacrifice? And if you find livestock, you don't spend it on sacrifices. You save it because you might need it, right? And Am Yisrael wasn't that way. In the midbar, they brought korbanos. Right, so that alone shows devotion. Let alone, as we get philosophical, we say it was our first emergence, and what you do at the first, that is your essence. Right? But that's on the one hand. But then Am Yisrael comes back and asks, okay, but if you're not gonna forget, what we sacrificed, maybe you won't forget how we did the sin of the golden calf. And that's what the Maharal, without quoting the next line, Gemara is clearly referring to that. Near Shesh Pir Vasilically so, but Dovra Mamin Hashem is Brach, Bitar So, so Chibul Gaia, Koshru, Bitas Law So Go, Bereshis, Kashalok Hashem, it's Yisrael, La'am. Umiat Sholti Sam Mitzrayim, Vasas the Torah, so is ego. Those are very Hashem concealed for Pirut, Poshem Chibul Vakir, Hashem is Brach, Mitzar Atzma, Kashem, Gam came Pirut, Mitzar Atzma. Right. So now Am Yisrael says, well, if what we did from the get-go in the desert under adverse conditions, but the main point is from the get-go of our existence is what you remember, that's like our essence. Well, it's pretty embarrassing, but it looks like from the get-go we showed that we could easily deviate from you. Because when they do the ego, in year one, just 40 days after Matan Torah, roughly, right? 40 days after Matan Torah, after Anochi Hashem Elokecha. 40 days after Matan Torah, less than 5 months, less than 5 whole months from the time they left Egypt, they did it, communal avodah zarah. So so you understand, Am Yisrael is really, they're not just, being stam argumentative with HaKadosh Baruch Hu. They're saying, well, if what's done from the get-go is our essence, did we not perhaps demonstrate that it's also in our essence to deviate from you? Right? As per the sin of the golden calf, that was also done very close to our being born as a nation within less than 5 months, from Yetzias Mitzrayim, and just 40 days after Anochi Hashem Elokecha. Does that maybe show that we in essence also part from you and deviate from you? God forbid. Right? All right, so maybe we have it in us to be separate from God. וזה כמו שיש לאב חיבור כשברו, וזה לזה מצד זה הוא האב וזהו הבן, כך יש להם פירוט גם כן בצמא, כי האב ובן הם מחולקים בעצמם, Shezeu v'zeh ben. V'doz lechshav pirud. Fikach bevada yesh kan silk pirud mitzad zeh. So, says Maharal, and it's not even a contradiction. It's not like one or the other. And that's why the next step of the Gemara is going to be very critical, very deep, because you understand, this is not a contradiction. I'm sure everyone was thinking this as we were learning this. I know a lot of cases where parents and kids have a very strained relationship, and even between kids and their mother, let alone kids and their father, kids and their mother maybe slightly less so, but kids and father for sure. So that's why I'm sure the Maharal is picking on the example of father. Strained relations with fathers are very, sadly, not very commonplace, but commonplace enough that I'm sure everyone was thinking of it as we were reading this, between a kid and a father. So Maharal Dafka chooses father because, the father has a little bit less of a connection with the kid because he didn't carry him around inside of him for 9 months, right? So Maharal picks that example because he's sure even in his day, people were probably thinking that as he was writing this, no, listen. So of course, a father loves his son. Gemara says a father could never kill his son. Gemara. That's why Boba Machteres, the father has to resort to a life of crime, even has to steal from his kids. So break and entry, you have to worry a break and entry thief is willing to kill. But if the break and entry thief is your father, you're not allowed to kill him himself with the presumption that your life is in danger because the father just cannot kill his son. It's a Gemara. Right, but still, they have a very strained relationship, right? Case in point, father will steal from his son, just never kill him. So parents together, but parents also apart. And even though in the Navi, it's going on the relationship of mother and son, but have we not seen plenty of cases where there's a strained relationship even between kids and their mothers? But Maharal's just picking on the example of father because it's a little bit more prone to happen. So it's not really a contradiction. Yeah, there's a family connection between parents and children. There's also family disconnection, right? Yeah, and both seemingly are equally as possible. So the family connection is demonstrated, right? From the, we'll talk about the family connection, that God also, that in his mind, Am Yisrael is the essence of creation because everything he created is for Am Yisrael. So even when the stars, it was all for Klal Yisrael. So Am Yisrael's first in thought. But now we're talking about the relationship between us and him, right? Which is our sacrificing to him in the desert from the get-go of becoming an independent nation, right? Yeah, okay, that's the good relationship of child to parent, but that relationship could go sour, as per the sin of the golden calf, which happened a very short while afterwards, right? And all in the same year. So, which what's dominant? They're both equally as possible, as we just said, both equally as possible when which one is dominant in our relationship with God. And with this, we try to keep these sessions limited to a half an hour. So we'll stop here on this cliffhanger. What's the answer to that? Right? Parents and children can have a great relationship. They can have a strained relationship. We seem to have demonstrated both in our relationship to Hashem. And how do we know that the good side is what's dominant and the bad, strained aspect of the relationship, which is also demonstrated already just 40 days later, right? How do we know that only the good is dominant and the bad is, mikra, that could be forgotten about, forget about it, right? The bad stuff, like the sin of golden calf. That we'll end on that cliffhanger, and believe that tomorrow we will continue. Have a good night, everybody, as I'm recording this at night. Kol Tov.